Welcome. To those who already know quietly, deeply, that something isn't right about the way someone has been treating you. You didn't stumble onto this video by accident. Truth has a way of finding the people who need it most. Here is what nobody tells you. The moment someone decides to target you, to twist your name, manipulate your image, or construct a version of you that doesn't exist, they have already activated a mechanism they cannot stop. Not a plan, not a campaign, a mechanism. One they built with their own hands, running entirely on the fuel of their own obsession. Research has confirmed what ancient wisdom already knew. The human mind is extraordinarily sensitive to patterns of deception. Within moments of sustained exposure, observers begin registering inconsistencies, emotional mismatches, and the telltale signs of a narrative being engineered rather than lived. That means every single move your aggressor makes, every word they plant, every story they spin, every audience they try to poison against you, is being processed and quietly judged by the very people they are trying to convince. They are not winning, they are performing, and performances eventually end. What you are about to understand will change the way you carry yourself through this. By the end, you will see not just why their efforts are failing, but why that failure is inevitable, already in motion, and requires nothing from you to complete itself. You don't have to do anything to make this happen. You just have to understand what is already happening and stand still while it does. Stay with me. Before we go further, I want to say something directly to your heart. This space exists because someone believed that the truth about manipulation, about resilience, about the quiet power inside people who refuse to be broken, deserves to be spoken out loud. Every word in this video was written not to fill time, but to reach someone who needed to hear it. Someone exactly like you. If this channel has ever helped you breathe a little easier, think more clearly, or feel less alone in something you are going through, you can extend that reach. There is a link in the description and one pinned in the comments, where you can offer a small gift to keep this mission moving. A coffee, a contribution, any amount you feel called to give. What I want you to know, every seed you plant in this work grows into something that shines in someone else's darkness. You are not funding content. You are becoming part of something larger. A quiet movement of people who believe that understanding your own mind is the most powerful thing you can do. And what you give returns to you. That is not poetry. That is the law of generous living. Whatever you sow in kindness, you will find again multiplied in ways you didn't expect. Now, let's talk about what is really happening to the person who has been targeting you. Here is the central truth. This video is built on. There is a war being waged, but it is not between you and them. It never was. The real war is between them and reality wins. Every time, without exception, without mercy, without any help from you. They chose to make you the center of their psychological universe. They chose to invest their time, their energy, their social capital into constructing a version of events that keeps you small and them in control. That choice, that single defining choice, is the wound that is silently bleeding them out. What follows are 14 truths about exactly how and exactly why. Every lie requires maintenance. Every fabricated story requires memory. Every manufactured version of events requires constant surveillance of who knows what, of what they have already said, of which details contradict which others. This is not a metaphor. This is the literal neurological cost of sustaining a false reality. Over time, that sustained load produces what psychologists call cognitive overload. a state where the mind can no longer hold all the threads of a constructed narrative together without visible strain, and that strain is showing. The stories that don't quite line up the same way twice, the overreactions when someone asks an innocent question, the sudden aggression when a conversation gets too close to the edge of what they have been protecting. These are not personality quirks. These are symptoms of someone whose invented world is fighting against the gravity of what is actually true. Think about what they have had to maintain. A version of you that justifies their behavior. A social narrative convincing enough that others believe it. And now they have to live inside that construction. Every day, every interaction. That is not a life. That is a prison with very thin walls. Meanwhile, you carry nothing. The truth requires no maintenance. It simply exists, and you carry it effortlessly, the way a stone carries its own weight. That asymmetry, their exhaustion against your steadiness, is already visible to the people around you both. Their collapse is not a future event. It is a current process, and it is accelerating. Picture someone in a shared social space, a workplace, a family circle, a group of mutual friends, quietly working in the background to undermine your reputation. They think they are being subtle. They think the small seeds of doubt they are planting are invisible. But here is what happens when you run a covert operation against another person in any shared environment. People notice the operator before they notice the operation. Social psychologists call this the boomerang effect of reputation manipulation. When someone campaigns too hard against another person, observers unconsciously shift their skepticism toward the campaigner. The question stops being, "Is this person bad?" and becomes, "Why does this person care so much?" And once that question gets asked, even silently, even privately, while someone's driving home from a dinner, it cannot be unasked. Every whisper they share, every story they tell, every subtle jab inserted into conversation, all of it is now compiling into a case file, not against you, but against them. An involuntary autobiography of someone consumed by fixation. And the audience is reading it, quietly without telling them. You don't need to correct the record. The record is correcting itself. There is a psychological phenomenon, so reliable it has its own name: projection. It describes the unconscious process by which a person attributes to others the qualities and intentions they cannot face in themselves. And it operates with devastating precision, because the accusations people make when projecting are almost always exact descriptions of what they themselves are doing. When someone tells others you are manipulative, look at the mechanism they are using to spread that message. When someone says you are obsessive, observe where their attention is focused, day after day. When someone paints you as the unstable one, watch how steady their own behavior has been. The content of their accusations is not random. It is autobiographical. And the people around them are beginning to notice the gap between the story they are telling and the life they are actually living. Their lies are not just failing to stick to you, they are sticking to them. Every exaggerated accusation becomes a data point. Every manufactured outrage becomes a pattern. Over time, the portrait that emerges is vivid and clear, not of you, of them. You don't have to defend yourself against accusations made from projection. Reality is already doing it for you. Here is something most people in your position don't realize, because they are too close to the situation to see the full picture. The people around you, mutual friends, colleagues, family members, are not neutral. They have not suspended judgment indefinitely. They already have an opinion. It was formed quietly, gradually, through accumulated observation, through moments that didn't quite add up, through the gut-level discomfort of being asked to participate in someone else's agenda. What hasn't happened yet is that they have spoken it out loud. In a culture where maintaining social harmony is often valued over honest confrontation, people carry private conclusions for months before expressing them. They smile at gatherings. They respond politely to messages, but they are watching. They are cataloging. They are remembering the moments when the story didn't match the behavior, when the emotion was disproportionate, when the energy of a conversation felt engineered rather than genuine. The silence of the people around you is not neutrality. It is observation. And when the time comes, when someone finally asks directly, what emerges will not be a verdict that needs to be argued. It will be a verdict that has been held in private for a very long time, waiting for permission to be spoken. You don't need to campaign. The jury has already deliberated. Identity is not fixed. It is constructed moment to moment. Through the choices a person makes about where they invest their attention and emotional energy. And here is the devastating consequence of making another person the center of your psychological universe. You become defined by that choice. When someone dedicates sustained energy to monitoring you, talking about you, crafting narratives about you, the people in their world begin to see them through that lens, not as a person with rich, independent interests and a life of their own, but as someone whose primary ongoing project is their relationship to you. This is identity erosion in real time, and the person experiencing it rarely sees it happening. The people closest to them are quietly doing the math. How much time has been spent on this, at the cost of what? Of deepening their actual relationships, of building a life they are proud of. The numbers don't add up to someone who is thriving. They add up to someone who is haunted. Meanwhile, you are out here, living, growing, present to your own existence. The contrast is not subtle, and it is not going unnoticed. We live in a culture that equates response with strength. If someone attacks you, the trained instinct reinforced by social media and public discourse is to fight back, to correct the record, to make your side loud enough to drown theirs out. That instinct is exactly what they are counting on. Because when you respond, when you argue, explain yourself, or engage with the details of what they have said, you do something that serves them completely. You validate that the fight exists. You enter the arena they have constructed and play by their rules. But when you don't, when you simply continue living your life with the quiet dignity of someone who has nothing to prove, a one-sided fight, sustained long enough, stops looking like justice and starts looking like obsession. The person still swinging at someone who isn't fighting back stops looking powerful. They start looking unwell. Your silence is not passivity. It is strategy, not because it denies them a reaction, but because it allows reality to do what silence always allows it to do: be seen clearly without noise. Every day you invest in your own life instead of the theater they have constructed. You demonstrate something no argument could prove: that this situation does not define you. You are bigger than what has been done to you. And that is the most devastating thing you can communicate, not with a speech, with a life. I want to slow down for a moment and say something that might surprise you. In the middle of everything that has happened, the words said behind your back, the stories shared without your knowledge, the attempts to shape how others see you, something has been quietly growing on your behalf. Not because you asked for it, but because of a fundamental truth about how human beings respond to watching someone be treated unfairly. People root for the person who is being targeted, almost without exception. There is a deep reason for this. Our social survival has always depended on our ability to recognize scapegoating, and we recognize it instinctively, even when we cannot name it. When we do, something in us aligns with the person being targeted. Every time someone went too far, pushed too hard, or made too clear how personal their investment in your diminishment really is. They generated sympathy that flows in one direction, yours. You have allies you haven't met yet. Quiet ones. People who have been watching and deciding privately on your behalf that what is being done isn't right. They haven't spoken yet, but they are there, and they are waiting. We are at the midpoint of this journey together, and I want to pause for just a moment, not to interrupt, but to invite. Everything shared here comes from a deep conviction that the people who struggle most quietly deserve the loudest support. If these words have found you at a moment when you needed them, if something in the first half of this video loosened a weight you have been carrying, then you already understand what this space is about. There is a link in the description and one pinned in the comments where you can contribute to keeping this work alive. A coffee, a small gift, whatever you feel moved to offer. When you give to this mission, you are not just clicking a button and walking away. You are becoming the reason someone else. Someone sitting right now where you were sitting 6 months ago will find the words they need at the exact moment they need them. You are the reason they will not feel alone. What you give returns to you, not always in the form you expect. Sometimes as clarity, sometimes as an unexpected connection, sometimes as an opportunity that appears when you least anticipated it. But the law of generous living is not a suggestion. It is a principle, and every act of giving you perform in alignment with something you believe in carries a particular kind of power. Now, let's finish what we started. Credibility is built slowly and lost quickly. That asymmetry is one of the fundamental rules of social trust, and it is working against them right now in ways they haven't fully calculated. Every claim they have made about you required that the listener believe them. At first, that belief came easily. We tend to give people the benefit of the doubt, but credibility functions like a bank account. Each claim is a withdrawal. And when the returns on those claims, the actual observable evidence, the reality that shows up against their narrative, don't match, the account gets overdrawn. The people in their world have now been receiving claims about you for however long this has been going on. In that same window, they have had their own observations with you or with the broader situation that either confirm or contradict what they have been told. Every time reality contradicts a confident claim, a small piece of trust transfers away from the person who made it. Quietly, without announcement. Like water finding its level, multiply that process by every person in the shared social space. By every conversation that didn't quite add up. By every prediction about your behavior that failed to materialize. Their credibility is not what it was 6 months ago. You don't need to accelerate this. It is already accelerating on its own. Here is something that becomes unmistakably clear when you step back far enough. Everything they have done, every story told, every rumor seeded, every attempt to control how you are perceived is not a display of power. It is an expression of fear. Confident people do not need to manage other people's reputations. People secure in themselves do not dedicate sustained energy to what someone else is doing or becoming. The behavior directed at you is not the behavior of someone who has won. It is the behavior of someone terrified of what happens if they don't keep running. Terrified of what? The fear of being exposed for something they have done. The fear of losing the standing they have built in part on narratives about you. The fear that if you are allowed to simply exist, openly and fully, something about their own story begins to fall apart. In every case, the fear is about them. You are not the threat. Your existence is simply the thing that makes the threat undeniable, and fear makes a person readable. The over-explaining, the urgency, the disproportionate energy, the inability to let any development sit without immediately responding to it. These are not signs of control. They are signals of someone who has lost it. People sense fear even when they cannot name it. And when they sense it, the instinct is not to follow. It is to distance. There is a specific kind of social theater that reveals itself most clearly under pressure. What psychologists call compensatory dominance. It looks like confidence. It presents like authority, but its signature is unmistakable. It always overreaches. It is always slightly too much. The volume is turned up just past the point where genuine confidence lives, because genuine confidence doesn't need volume. It simply occupies space. Watch how they behave in environments where you are in some way present, whether physically or in the conversation. The way their energy shifts, the way their language becomes more declarative, more certain, more invested in establishing a particular impression. This is the behavioral signature of someone performing for an audience. Specifically, the one they believe is connected to you. The irony of performance is that its very nature undermines its goal. When a person's behavior in a situation is visibly different from their baseline, when they are clearly shaping a response, rather than simply responding, observers register the gap. What they conclude, subconsciously and accurately, is that this person is afraid. Afraid that without the performance, the real thing wouldn't hold up. Afraid that somewhere, somehow, the truth is gaining ground. What they are displaying is not power. It is the desperate rehearsal of someone who knows, on some level, that the curtain is about to come down. One of the most underestimated consequences of sustained obsession is what it does to the relationships of the person experiencing it. The people closest to them began this journey as potential allies. They heard the first stories. They offered sympathy. They participated in the early rounds of the narrative. But relationships are dynamic, and the people in them are perceptive. Over time, something shifts when one person is perpetually consumed by something outside of themselves. It becomes exhausting to be close to someone who cannot move on, who circles back to the same topic, who measures every social development against how it relates to their ongoing situation. Friendship, at its best, is a place of mutual presence. When one person's presence is always elsewhere, always occupied by the person they have made into an obsession, the friendship hollows out. The other person begins to feel like a supporting character in someone else's drama. They may not say anything. They may continue showing up, but they invest less, trust less. This is happening right now, in relationships they depend on, in ways they cannot see, because obsession produces tunnel vision. They are watching for your moves while missing the slow withdrawal of the people standing right next to them. When the moment of real need comes, they will discover that the well is shallower than they thought. This is the point I want you to hear most clearly. Not because it is the most dramatic, but because it is the most important. You, your continued existence, your continued development, your continued presence in the world are the most powerful evidence available against every narrative they have tried to build. Not because of anything you have said, not because of any defense you have mounted, but because you are still here, still building, still becoming, still, quietly, undeniably, yourself. The stories they have told about you have a shelf life. They require your cooperation to survive. They need you to collapse, to self-destruct, to confirm through your behavior the portrait they have been painting. And when that doesn't happen, when months pass and you are still standing, still present, still a person of observable character, the portrait begins to peel from the wall on its own. Think about what it means to the people around you both, when they observe your actual life against the story they were told. When the person who was supposed to be falling apart is, in fact, evolving. When the person who was supposed to be discredited is, in fact, increasingly respected. Not because they campaigned for it, but because they simply kept showing up with character. Your presence is the rebuttal. Your life is the evidence. Your continued growth is the argument they cannot counter because they cannot control it. There is a threshold in the arc of prolonged targeted behavior where the behavior itself becomes the story, where the content of what they have been saying matters less than the fact that they are still saying it. And once that threshold is crossed, everything that follows, no matter how carefully crafted, operates in a completely different light. They crossed that threshold, possibly some time ago. The pattern is the evidence now. Not any single statement, not any specific accusation, but the sustained, consistent, relentless pattern of attention directed at one person over an extended period. Observers who once engaged with the details, who wondered whether a particular claim was true, have gradually stopped asking those questions. A new question has replaced them. Why is this still happening? That question, once it takes root in someone's mind, changes the entire frame. The answer that makes the most sense is never flattering to them. It points toward fixation, toward a psychological state where the normal signals that tell most people when to disengage have stopped functioning normally. And fixation, at this scale, is not something people respect. They hold it with careful distance. The way you hold something you are not sure is safe to touch. A blanket skepticism settles in. A permanent shift in the weight they assign to everything that person says. Every new thing they say about you is now read through that lens, and that lens does not flatter them at all. I want you to really sit with what I am about to say. The version of you that they constructed, the small, controllable, diminishable version, was never real. It was a reflection of their own fear, projected outward, dressed in your name, built with features that said more about their insecurities than your character. They needed that version of you to exist in order for something in their own self-narrative to survive. Because if you are, in fact, who you actually are, someone of genuine substance and depth, then certain stories they have been telling themselves about themselves begin to fall apart. And that is exactly what is happening. Not because you have done anything, but because the truth about you, the one that exists in real life, in the real observations of people who encounter you both, keeps refusing to fit the shape of their story. Every time they tighten the narrative, reality bends it back. Every time they add a wall to the cage, you simply walk around it, not out of strategy, but because you were never inside it to begin with. And that persistent, undeniable, unkillable reality of who you actually are is breaking something in them. Not cruelly, not with celebration, but with the simple and inevitable force of what happens when a constructed reality meets an unconstructed one. They are not sleeping the way they used to. The emotional ground beneath their certainty has been quietly shifting for some time now, destabilized by the one thing they cannot control, which is you continuing to exist exactly as you are. Stand still, stay true, let the unraveling continue at its own pace. You are already untouchable, not because of anything you have fought for, but because of what you have always been, and what their most determined efforts have proven they cannot change. Let me bring this full circle. Over the course of these 14 truths, one pattern has emerged with unmistakable clarity. Every action taken against you has doubled as a self-portrait. Every lie has revealed the liar. Every attempt at control has documented instability. Every performance of dominance has exposed the fear beneath it. Every obsessive push has generated sympathy that flows in the wrong direction. For them, this is not a situation that required your intervention. It required your endurance. And you are still here, which means you are already on the other side of the hardest part. What remains is this: continue to be the person you have always been. Not a hardened version, not a defended version, not a version shaped by what has been done to you. The original, full, uncompromised version, because that is the one they cannot argue with, cannot diminish, cannot contain. The one that, simply by existing, renders everything they have constructed irrelevant. Their obsession has been a mirror. Their lies have been testimony. Their unraveling has been the verdict. And through all of it, through every attempt, every strategy, every moment of sustained pressure, you have remained the one thing this entire campaign was designed to prevent: untouchable, present, real. That is who you are. That is who you have always been. And no amount of engineered narrative can change a fact that was never theirs to touch. Remember that, carry it quietly, and live accordingly. If these words reached you somewhere real, if they named something you have been living but couldn't articulate, or gave shape to something you sensed but couldn't yet see clearly, I want you to do something right now. Hit subscribe. Not just so you don't miss the next video, but because what is built here is built for people exactly like you. People navigating hard things with quiet dignity. People who deserve to understand not just what is happening to them, but why, and what it means, and what to do with it. Hit like if any of this opened a window in your thinking. That small action tells the algorithm that this kind of content matters, and it puts this video in front of someone else who needs it right now. Tonight, in a moment, you and I will never know about, but that matters more than either of us can calculate. And now, the comment I most want from you. Don't write great video, write something real. Tell me, which one of these 14 points hit closest to home for you? Was it the point about silence being your most powerful strategy? The moment I said the jury has already deliberated, it just hasn't announced itself yet. The realization that their obsession is quietly eroding their own identity in the eyes of everyone around them. And you recognize someone you know in that description. Whatever it is, write it below. One line, one paragraph.